What's up, everybody? Welcome to Trippy Theories. You can call me AJ. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about psychedelics, but today I wanted to talk to you guys about magic mushrooms and what they feel like. And quick disclaimer, okay, I'm not recommending anybody to go out and to try mushrooms on their own or to do anything illegal. I'm just giving you my own personal experience from what I've done in the past. And I'm not a pharmacologist. I have no college degree. All I have to offer you is just my own experience. Now, before we get into this, just know that I am a mushroom apologist. This is something that I truly believe works for me. So I am biased in that sense a little bit. I'm fascinated and perplexed by the whole thing. I've spent years trying to figure out what this is and what does it mean. And mushrooms have shown me that there's something else going on that we can't see in the world with our eyes. There's something that runs deeper in reality. We're going to talk about all that in future videos, but before we talk about that, I figure it's fair to just talk about the mushrooms themselves and what do they feel like. So, what do mushrooms feel like? This is a broad question because mushrooms hit different people in different ways at different doses. You can take the same amount that you did the last time, same strain, same batch, same everything, and you can have a completely different experience. So sometimes the mushrooms choose the dose for you, okay? And with my experience, it isn't always what I wanted, but it's typically what I needed. Sometimes it feels like you're bathing in God's love, and other times it can scare the pants off you. So, the big thing I do is to always remember to respect the mushrooms and examine my state of mind before taking the mushrooms. Remember, you're up against the power of mind when you're in these altered psychedelic states of consciousness. This does different things to different people, but a couple of main things that I've noticed that it does is, well, for one, it's a boundary dissolver. So different parts of the brain are communicating with each other that don't normally communicate with each other. The boundary between the subconscious and the conscious mind is dissolved. The boundary between you and this psychedelic hyperspace, whatever that is gone. Another thing they do that I'm sure many of you have heard of before is this thing we call ego dissolution. And this is terrifying to the Western mind because we live in such an ego driven culture that the thought of losing your sense of individuality, what you think your individuality is, sends people running for the hills, especially the people who are in charge. With low doses, like a gram and under, you're not going to be getting effects like ego dissolution. Low doses is usually used for microdosing, which is about zero point 0.3 grams. Now, although microdosing doesn't have profound effects in that moment, over time it has had a lot of benefits for a lot of people. It helps with depression, anxiety, anger issues. It helps people connect with people around them more. It does a lot of good stuff. It's just not typically what I go for. I usually go for higher doses. But once you get up to the 2 to 3.5 gram range, this kind of feels like LSD if you've ever taken it. You'll see patterns, geometric patterns. The walls might look a little melty, especially when you get up to like 4 grams. For me, this dose is very psychoanalytical. Self examination is a big part of it. I typically have some profound realizations and insights on myself and the world around me. It's great for going on nature walks and connecting with nature, tripping with other people. It's great. I love it. But I don't usually go over the 3.5 gram dose if I'm tripping with other people. That's something that's kind of sacred and just for me. But the real magic happens once you get up to these larger doses, 5 grams and above. This is what they call the heroic dose. And how I'll typically do it is I will crush up my dose of mushrooms however big it is, however brave I'm feeling that day, and I will put it in a coffee filter and brew myself mushroom tea water. And then I take a chamomile tea, and this is important. I take a chamomile tea bag and I'll steep it in this hot blue mushroom water. And I take it like this for a couple of reasons. One, it helps with the come up anxiety. So at the beginning, when your mushrooms are first starting to hit you, it's normal to have this feeling of, oh no, oh, what have I done? This is not good. I shouldn't have done this. You know, you might get a little wigged out. It might hit you in a way that you weren't expecting it to hit you. Now, this come up anxiety is normal. It's a normal part of the process when you're taking mushrooms. So if you are experiencing come up anxiety, don't lock yourself into, oh, I'm having a bad trip. Okay? You might have a pretty hellish time doing that. Just remember that the come up anxiety is a normal part of it and it will pass. And taking it in the tea form, it also helps with nausea. And it'll hit a little bit different than just taking the whole dried mushrooms themselves. It'll hit you quicker. Usually with dried mushrooms, eating them whole, it will take about an hour to an hour and a half before it starts to really hit you. With the tea, it's much quicker. It's like 30 to 40 minutes, and by 50 minutes in, I'm usually like at the peak. Usually, how I know that it's hitting me is I'll notice that my whole frame of vision just sort of warps, like pew, and it comes back, kind of like my eyes popped out of my head and looked to the side and came back. And when my frame of vision starts to shift like that, then I know that, okay, it's starting. Okay, it's time to go hunker down and get ready for this. And I'll usually either lay down or sit up, depending on how I'm feeling. And I'll put on some shamanic frequencies in the background. Some people do silent darkness, but for me, I've noticed that having shamanic frequencies in the background kind of helps steer the trip to where I want it to go. And sometimes it's easier to lay down, sometimes it's more beneficial to sit up, but I close my eyes and I meditate. And I let the mushrooms show me what it wants to show me. And in these states, on these higher doses, stuff happens, okay? It's like an event. It's more of an event than it is a high. It doesn't feel like a high from your typical drug. I close my eyes because it's behind the eyelids where it really shows you things on these higher doses. And it speaks to me sometimes, and I don't really know what this thing is that is speaking to me. A couple of weeks ago, I was flying in the air in some type of planet somewhere. It looked like a planet from Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that. But it was not Earth. I know that. And wherever I went, I was flying. I was coming up on this hill. And as I'm flying, coming up to this hill, as I get close to it right here, I morph into the hill. I become the hill. But the really weird thing about it is, as if that's not weird enough, is I was both the hill and whatever this was flying up in the air. I became both at the same time. And that sounds really weird. That's just an example of something that happens. Your consciousness goes someplace else, and you get to have some pretty wild experiences. Mushrooms hit everybody different. Each experience is going to be different from the other, and people are going to have different experience from each other. But one thing that remains similar throughout these is that it will be as equally as bizarre on these higher doses, especially. So what? What is it? Where does it come from? How has it played a role in the history of humanity? And what can this do for humanity? These are questions that I'm trying to find the answers to. I'm not entirely convinced that this is strictly the mind and nothing else. I'm just not buying it. It feels deeper than that. It feels like it has its own personality. But if it is just the mind, I think that says a hell of a lot about us. I mean, God, if it's just the mind, we've explored about as much of the human mind as we have the oceans of this planet. And I was hoping that some of you out there can enlighten me and ask the right questions so I can do more research and we can talk about this further with each other. So if you do have any questions about what this is, or how mushrooms feel, or anything about psychedelics that you want to talk about, please comment down below. I promise I'll read them so we can talk about this together in future videos. If you want to see more videos about psychedelics and psychedelic content, make sure you hit that subscribe button and we will talk in the future.